Okay, everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. To have a really cool review for you guys from the brand Spinnaker. A little about them. They're a brand offering classic nautical design aesthetics in an affordable modern package. Now, in terms of the type of watch, this actually falls within two different categories. It's a nice little matchup between a dive watch and a traveler's watch. On the dive watch side, some key characteristics in its language. When you're looking for something within this space, of course, you're going to want to find water resistance to some type of screw-down crown. You want something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelets. On the traveler's watch side, you're going to be looking for some type of GMT or world timer functionality, so you're able to track multiple time zones with relative ease. This is their Bradner GMT in the beige linen colorway, and it's a retro compressor inspired diver, now with the added GMT function, with 6 new colorways available for 2024, and this is one of the newer colorways. This does come on a beads of rice bracelet as well as this really cool rubber tropic style strap. I have featured this model before. I had it on the bracelet, so I figured this one, why not put it on the strap and share with you guys. Big shout out to Spinnaker for sending this watch in for me to be able to give you guys a little overview. These are going to go for $490 direct from the brand, and of course Spinnaker is a pretty big brand now, so you can even buy them from other dealers as well. 42mm size, I think makes it quite versatile, although it does have a pretty big expansive dial, so you know this thing isn't going to wear small, but I think it wears a nice kind of full size kind of wear profile, which I can appreciate. Also, one thing to note is that it is a bit thick, and you guys are probably gonna notice that once we get into some of the details, but that is kind of the nature of the beast when it comes to GMTs, because you do have to accommodate for that additional hand stack height, as well as the fact that, yeah, this is a dive watch with an interesting 18 atmospheres or 180 meters of water resistance. So there's a certain level of robustness that has to be kind of baked into the formula as well. So this one, they really don't try to convince you that this is going to be some super sleek, slim wearing watch. Instead, they decided to go with bold colorways to kind of suit the bold nature of the way that this is going to sit on your wrist. So with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, woo, what a looker here. Check it out. I'm digging this colorway. I mean, there's a lot of different colorways and they're all funky and they're all cool, but for me, this is the one that really stood out. I really dig this. It just feels quite subtle and versatile at the same time, but still in the right situations, it's going to give you a whole ton of pop and visual interest. Here's that side case profile, and I know some of you are not thrilled with it, but I will say at least they go through the trouble of giving you that nice thin mid case, so you can really kind of try to compartmentalize the case, the overall case structure. It kind of looks like there's a larger watch kind of sitting within a little thin gate in terms of that center mid case there. So and then you also got to remember, when it's on your wrist, really you're not going to see that lower portion. So really what you're going to be left with visually is going to be a thin mid case and a pretty tall bezel. But again, the tall bezel side is going to be more so a result of this GMT functionality, where you're going to need, a bit more clearance in terms of the crystal there. Check that out. Look at that hand stack. Again, it's quite tall. So getting into some of the details here, guys, 42 millimeters in diameter, 15 millimeters thick. 15 millimeters, I know it's thick, but you know what? It's not the thickest. So something to also consider. It's also not the most expensive. Lug to lug, 50 millimeters, guys. That is quite substantial, but it does, as you can see, have a nice downwards drape, so that will definitely redirect these straps down on your wrist. Now, also for the bracelet, if you're looking to that, I'll leave a link at the end of the video. For the previous video, I featured this model on with a different colorway. It also has female end link, so that's nice. So that's going to also offer you a nice drape. Maybe not as versatile as on strap, but still a nice drape nonetheless. So Those are kind of the dimensions there. You're getting a nice sapphire here, guys, which is really nicely done. It has a slight kind of boxed edge to it. It is flat, though, the majority of the crystal. But then I think that boxed edge does give you a nice amount of play and a little bit of visual interest in terms of some of the distortion you can get at the furthest reaches of the dial. So I think that's pretty cool. And then you have two crowns. Of course, this one is going to be a non-screw down. It's just there, and you can use this to actually set your offsets depending on if you're traveling, right? So very, very cool, very nifty there. And then the other one is a screw down crown. They're both actually decorated, so you're getting one signed, one nicely decorated there with a little arrow to kind of remind you, hey, if you're going to turn it, there you go, right? This does rotate. It's not there just for looks. Now, getting into the case back, guys, it is a nice display case back, and they just printed over that Seiko Instruments logo on the rotor there. And basically this is an NH34. It's a color GMT, which means that in terms of its functionality, it is nice for an office type of setup, to where maybe you're not traveling to another time zone, you're more so trying to keep track of another time zone while you're at your home location, and you know, whether it be you're tracking the East Coast, Japan, or wherever else. Essentially, you're going to be able to have that offset and understand while not kind of confusing your eye from the main hours. Now, in terms of the specs here, 41-hour power reserve beats at 3 hertz, so 21,600 vibrations per hour in terms of that beat rate. And yeah, it's nice that they do have a little display back. I'm curious to see how much they might have been able to shave off of the thickness if they would have not went with the display back. But, you know, again, at the end of the day, that's going to be butted up to the back of your hand. So it's not even going to be the most point of focus when you are looking at the thickness, or the perceived thickness anyway, on wrist. Now, getting into the dial, it's a beautiful matte tone to it, guys, as you guys can see, but it's not one dimensional. It definitely has almost like a, I don't want to say fume kind of gradient to it, but I feel like it might. Like those outer edges, let me know in the comments. Am I seeing things? I feel like those outer edges do add a little bit of darkness, and then towards the center, it is a bit brighter, which does add a nice little bit of extra dimension. You also do have the date there at 3 o'clock, and it has a nice funky date where it's actually a black disc with white numerals. So it stands out in a way, but it doesn't overpower either. So I think that's pretty clean. You're getting painted hands, guys. Check them out. Everything is nicely color matched, you know, to where everything coordinates really well, as you would expect. You're getting Swiss Superluminova that does glow green. I don't know which particular compound because it wasn't specified. 18 atmospheres or 180 meters of water resistance, so not a full 200, but definitely more capable than your typical 100-meter diver. In terms of the lugs here, 20-millimeter lugs, which are really nice. You get it on this rubber tropic style strap. Beautifully done. Look at the execution on this buckle. Very clean, fully milled, even that little finger there. You're also getting 2 floating keepers. You're getting that signature tropic style basket weave texture. Really nice, and it even does have a beautiful taper to it and thickness, where it's nice and thick up on the higher ends of the band, so that you can really keep that watch planted. And then it's a little thinner here on the underside, so you can have everything tucked for comfort. So that is another nice one, and it does feature quick release spring bars. These are signed Spinnaker, and you know, it does have that stainless steel beads of rice bracelet. Definitely check the links that'll be at the end of the video if you want to see the other color variation on that bracelet. I'm more of a bracelet guy, but again, for me, this colorway was just a little fun, and I'm really into this kind of shade and tone of straps these days. I've seen some really cool sailcloth straps in this color, and I've really enjoyed them. So seeing a tropic done like this, I think has been very, very neat. Now, with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this is a full-sized watch. It's definitely not a mid-sized. But I don't really see it as oversized. I think it does a nice job of centering itself pretty well. And again, although I do have a larger than average 7.5-inch wrist, it is also still quite a round wrist, so it's not super flat and wide and accommodating to any old watch there. I do have to keep an eye on things like lug to lug, like the proportions, the dial to bezel ratios, all of that good stuff in terms of finding something that wears really well on my wrist. But you guys can see there, if you're going to look at it from this angle, it does appear a little bit bulbous, and if you get your watch too close to the lens, it's going to appear even bigger, but that is all a visual trick. So what I like to do is keep my wrist nice and low and then tighten up the shot so that you can still get a detailed look, but just with a lot less of that perspective distortion. Check that out. This is closer to how it might look on your own wrist if you were staring down at it. Check that out. And I have to say, when you look at it through these eyes and this perspective, it's not too shabby, guys. I mean, if you've worn chronographs, right, or really deep sea divers, you'll have, you know, at some point come across something that's going to be closer to 15 millimeters. And I will say that, you know, if they made maybe a shorter bezel and made more of the crystal, you know, the heights so that it was see-through, it might, you know, maybe do a enclosed case back. They could probably shave a couple millimeters off of this, but then when you think about the fact that it does have that beautifully 3D inner rotating 24-hour scale bezel, you know, you realize, well, that height is kind of built in, but at least they utilize that space well. Look at the 3D sloped ring there. It's just really fun to look at. So you get a lot of great visual interest and play here. This doesn't feel flat. And yeah, it's not flat wearing, but it also pops. And again, it's quite dynamic and in a way that I think really suits the overall theme here. So with that said, let's actually get this off the wrist, set up for some loom shots, the light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Oh, there we go. Check it out. Really, really nice. That 3D loom there on the outer edges of that 24-hour chapter ring is very cool. And the nice thing is, a lot of times you actually will lose that 24-hour tracking functionality when you do get into low light situations. So it's cool to see a brand that, you know, decided, hey, let's loom this up. Let's really, you know, make it a cool feature. And I dig that 3D portion of it. So again, that thickness is at the very least being utilized versus it seeming, you know, sometimes where watches can be thick just for the sake of it, right? So one thing I always like to work in is a bit of a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, guys. Check that out. Ooh, it's a looker. The dial, the colors, the balance, it just gives you the right vibes. Fun, playful. It's a summer watch, and I think that's cool, right? It's not meant to be your one watch. It's not meant to be your one and done type of thing. This is definitely one that is meant for a collector to enjoy amongst other pieces. And you know what? The Spinnaker brand is so diverse at this point that you could even have your own little mini Spinnaker collection. So very, very cool. Not too shabby at all from this perspective. But one thing, let's go ahead and, there we go. Okay, closing thoughts, guys. On the wrist, really bold wear. Again, in terms of the colorway, in terms of the way that it sits, tons of presence and personality. Clearly, this sporty retro vibe is really shining through. In terms of model variants, definitely check out the links in the description for options and availability. And then when we get into comparable models, guys, there's tons of competition thanks to the accessibility of that Seiko Instruments NH34 movement. But this one I think it hits a pretty nice sweet spot, right? Even at full price directly from the brand at $490, I think it's still very competitive. So for me, guys, bottom line, Spinnaker smartly converts one of their more popular divers into a versatile GMT watch that I think closely rivals Seiko's own entry-level 5KX SSK GMT line. And I think what Spinnaker may lack in brand recognition and heritage, it definitely makes up for it in value proposition and overall fun factor. You remember, you're getting this cool strap as well as a bracelet, and that's just a given. So I think that's really cool. I think it's really well thought out. It's handsome, it's fun. Again, it's not going to be anybody's grail or anything like that, but you know what, I think if you're looking for something, you've been wanting to try out a GMT watch, you've been wanting to try out a dive watch, but maybe you're just very specific within your tastes, this could even fit into kind of a more mild wild card type of watch where, maybe it's your one watch that has a pop of color there where you're normally a little bit more muted and monochromatic in terms of your style. So let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.